Welcome back to Intro to Religion, PHL 1030. In this video, we are going over question B15 for exam 1. And it is, would it be plausible for a theist to combine the falling elevator model of resurrection with the multiverse theory? Why or why not? So this is chapter 8 we're going over, and it is different theories about resurrection, the resurrection of the dead from the grave. So Tim Bain, in this book, he's focusing on the Abrahamic religions. So he says we're going to leave theories about a soul surviving after death to one side and just focus on the theory of bodily resurrection on some kind of a day of judgment. How would that make sense? So this is a philosophy of religion class. So the philosophical analysis of religious claims such as the body will resurrect from the grave is being subjected to rational analysis, and this question focuses on one particular idea of how it might come about that our bodies can continue to live after death. And so Dean Zimmerman, this is page 111. As the philosopher Dean Zimmerman has noted, all right, so Zimmerman, this is his model. So he's provided a third model of the resurrection, the falling elevator model. According to this view, at the moment of death, God gives the atoms in one's body the power to bud, with the result that each atom generates an exact duplicate of itself at another location, what Zimmerman calls the next world. These duplicate atoms form a living organism with the result that one now has two bodies, a corpse and a freshly minted body. Zimmerman argues that in this scenario, one would survive as the second organism rather than as one's corpse, because this organism's life would be a continuation of one's own. In some sense, you would have jumped from one body to another. The falling elevator label is meant to evoke the comic strip image in which a protagonist cheats death by jumping out of a falling elevator at the last minute. So, how does the body resurrect from the grave? Some of the objections discussed earlier in the chapter to that theory is that even if God does reassemble your atoms at the day of resurrection, you won't be the same person because of this gappiness objection, that you could disassemble a watch and put it back together, it's the same watch, but living organisms aren't like that. When you disrupt the chain of cause and effects that constitute a living being, then the living being that is resurrected is a new being. It's a doppelganger. It might be an exact duplicate, but it can never be the same. So to overcome that objection, Zimmerman comes up with this idea of every atom budding into a new duplicate atom, but because it's budding from your original atoms, it's a continuation of your living organism. And so that overcomes the gappiness objection. So what I'm saying is, would that idea work with the multiverse theory, which Tim Bain discussed on page 37, and that is the response that atheists will often point to when they are addressed with the fine-tuning argument about especially the constants of nature, the physical constants of nature, and especially the cosmological constant, which describes the expansion rate of space-time. It's so finely tuned that it must be the product of an intelligent designer if ours is the only universe. However, if we're one of an infinite number of parallel universes in a multiverse, then the incredibly unlikely odds that all of the parameters required for life to exist would be in our universe become inevitable. I don't know if they really would become inevitable, but at least they become more probable, and the appeal to an intelligent designer becomes less necessary. So says the argument of the multiverse. So could you combine this falling elevator idea of the continuation of bodily life with the multiverse theory? I think you could, because the multiverse theory, which I've described in previous videos, was initiated by Hugh Everett III in 1957. So he was a physicist, and he was talking about the wave of probability in quantum mechanics. When you observe a wave of probability, so let's just put a two-dimensional wave here, most likely if you observe it, it will collapse at the peak, but it could appear over here or anywhere. So Hugh Everett asked, when we observe it and the wave collapses to any individual point, what happens to all those potential points where it could have collapsed but didn't? And then he said it is just as mathematically consistent to say that each point does manifest in a parallel universe, that each wave of probability contains an infinite number of parallel universes, the only difference between one universe and the other being the position of that one particle. So, according to that multiverse theory, which is the standard cosmology of most cosmologists today, even though it can't be empirically verified because you can't see outside our universe because of the faster than light expansion of space-time, which is determined by the cosmological constant. But mathematically, that is what seems to be the most plausible scenario to a lot of cosmologists like Michio Kaku and Brian Greene and Leonard Susskind, Stephen Hawking, who perished earlier in 2018. So at any rate, if that's the case, then each one of us is constantly bifurcating. Some version of us is constantly being split into an infinity of parallel versions of us, that there are an infinite number of versions of each of us constantly budding out from each other. So then the question is, well, is that parallel version of me, or is that another soul? Or are there souls? Or if it's a physical being, how can I be that and the other person? Where does one person start and another end? So that raises plenty of questions, but that's what the point of the question is, just to get you to think about these different scenarios. So the question was, Exam 1, Part B, number 15, would it be plausible for a theist to combine the falling elevator model of resurrection with the multiverse theory, why or why not? And that will cover that question.